Feedback loops are foundational to Agile culture and critical for AI systems. Yet they're often misunderstood and dismissed as unnecessary talk instead of real work. In reality, skipping feedback means missing opportunities for improvement and getting stuck in cycles of repetition without learning. Today, we'll explore how feedback loops drive continuous improvement, foster psychological safety, and unlock adaptability for both teams and AI systems, creating the foundation for resilient, thriving organizations. Welcome. I'm Sean, a lean agile coach with over 20 years of experience and a deep passion for aligning agile and AI to build healthier, more productive workplaces. Together, let's uncover strategies for real impactful change. Let's dive in. So let's start by creating a definition or understanding what we mean by feedback loops. Feedback loops are iterative cycles of input, reflection, and action. So there's some information that we're receiving. Somebody's giving us that input, and it's not just about collecting this as treasures that we're going to put together, but it's something that we're going to reflect upon. We're going to look at this input and we're going to think about it, and then we're going to take action on it. The surest way to guarantee that people won't give you feedback is for them to go through the time and the effort and you do nothing with it. That will kill it. That will kill the process. Instead, what we do is we engage. We mindfully think about it, consider it, and then we take some action. Now, this input process can take many forms. It could be ideally in real time, so some discussion. It doesn't have to be in person. It could be over a video call or on the phone or whatever mechanism, but an opportunity to immediately ask clarifying questions. That's the important piece, is having a mechanism to ask clarifying question. If it's written, always when giving feedback, make sure to add a line saying, hey, if you have any questions, if I can clarify anything, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. Always leave that door open for that clarification to happen, because the worst thing that could happen is with good intentions, we give somebody feedback and there isn't a clarification and they misunderstand our feedback, take action, and it turned out it wasn't what we meant and they end up doing something that doesn't work well or not what we wanted. That is very deflating to everybody. So always have an opportunity to clarify. Once we are clear on what the input is, then we reflect upon it. We consider it. It's not about offending our pride or our ego. It's really with an open mind and an open heart, just thinking about it and going, okay, that's a different way to look at it. Especially when we disagree with it very strongly. Let's consider somebody out there has this perception, this perspective. They're likely representative of a group of people, maybe a large group, maybe a small group. Either way, it's often the case that people are representing a group of people's perspective. What do we want to do about it? Sometimes we may choose to ignore it. That's valid. There are reasons to do that. And other times we may think, okay, well, I don't entirely agree, and that is something that I want to consider. Is there something that I can do to incorporate it? So the reflection aspect of it is really important to then take action. Again, there are some cases when we decide, no, we're not going to take any action, and there may be valid reasons for it. And at the very least, follow up. Follow up with the action of saying, thank you, I heard you. At this time, we're not going to be able to do anything about it. You may give a reason or not, but at least do that, because that will make people feel that they were heard and at least that their input was considered. If they never hear back and there's no closure, then this is the kind of thing, then there's no action. This is the kind of dynamic that can lead to people no longer giving you feedback. So very careful to have that balance. When we're talking about types of feedback loops, you can think of positive and negative feedback loops. Positive feedback loop amplifies actions or behaviors. There are things that are going well, that we like, that are meeting expectations, our needs. So we give feedback, that positive feedback, to reinforce that. We want more of that. We do that with AI systems. When we have the opportunity to provide our feedback, that reinforces into the system in its perspective, its biases, to give us more of what we like. This is a way that we can interact in a way to shape the behaviors of AI systems, just as we do the behaviors of human beings. Same thing for negative feedback loops. This is something that we want to correct and stabilize processes, actions, outputs that we're receiving, because they're missing our expectations, they're missing our needs. And then we can also think of feedback loops as natural or designed. Think of natural feedback loops as something that requires observations of actions and then results. So the more mindful we are, the better we are at identifying, noticing, and interpreting those natural feedback loops. An example in nature, okay, if we all of a sudden start noticing that species are disappearing from the ecosystem, that's a negative feedback look. Well, we can either ignore it, we never noticed, and then we have more of that happening, or we notice it and we do something about it. Natural feedback loops is contrasted to designed feedback loops. Designed feedback loops are deliberate efforts to uncover insights on some information. Sometimes facilitation can be very helpful because people may have a perspective, they may have something that they've noticed, but not necessarily have a request or an action for us to take. So in those situations, it's really helpful to have a facilitation engagement. And what that means is that whether ourselves or through the help of somebody who's familiar with this, we're looking at a large volume of information that doesn't, we don't yet know what the distilled essence of it is to take us into a position of taking action. And through dialogue, through refining it, through going back and forth, we bring it down to a distilled, really tangible, really clear message that we can then take action on. So design requires effort. It requires effort of going back and forth, really looking at things in order to get to that gold nugget that we can take action on. Whereas natural requires mindfulness, and so the awareness of even noticing that the information is there all around us. When we don't do this, we run the risk of getting stuck in a plan do trap. The plan do refers to the plan do check and act that I've mentioned in previous videos. And what this is we just simply plan to do something, we execute it, and we go to the next thing, and we do it, and we go, and we go. I don't know if it's true that it's attributed to Einstein, but it's said that the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Whether he said it or not, I really like that quote. Yeah, why would we expect anything to get any better? Why would we expect anything to improve if we just keep planning and doing, planning and doing, planning and doing, and we never take a look at what's happened? We never think about it. We never adjust. Feedback is vital in the process of checking. If nobody's there to give us feedback, then that's our perspective only, and that's very narrow. We want to be able to take that feedback and incorporate it into a plan do check step so that we can avoid repeating inefficient processes or in the process in where customers are involved, losing the opportunity to improve what it is that we're delivering to them. AI systems doing as well. If without the feedback, they perpetuate biases due to poor feedback. Teams do it when they deliver features that fail to meet customer needs, and they just keep going and going. And the customer's frustrated after a while because nothing's heading in a good direction. So feedback is really critical. And Agile really values feedback. And here we need to acknowledge that it's fundamentally different. It's a fundamentally different culture and space and perspective of how waterfall and agile view feedback. They mean different things in both from both perspectives. And we need to be mindful of that when we're engaging in implementing feedback as part of our practices. So first, let's take a look at what happens from a waterfall perspective. Always, always, always keep in mind that we're talking in relation to the nature of the work. And we're talking about simple and complicated work. This is things that we've likely done many times before. All we need to do is just execute more of it. It may be a new type of work, but it's based on things that we've done over and over again. So we have experience, we have proficiency at executing. Why do we need to talk about it? Just get it done. And that's the perception. The perception is that you're not working, you're talking. Stop talking, work. When when we introduce our agile perspectives into waterfall environments, there's a real perception problem that says that, oh yeah, those people never work. Oh, they never do anything. They just talk, 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 talk. They don't deliver. That's part of what we need to change. We need to understand that the nature of the work that each group is doing is very different. When you're dealing with very uncertain, very ambiguous, mildly defined, you need to discover, if you're not talking constantly, you're going to end up building the wrong thing. So the communication is part of the work. That's what we're doing. And it's also a shift on when we're talking, because it would be incorrect to say that waterfall doesn't talk. Of course it does. In the requirements analysis phase, there's tremendous amount of talk. There's tremendous amount of figuring it out. But the thing is that it compartmentalizes it. It puts it all at front so that you can then, when you're working, you're just executing, executing, executing. Waterfall mixes the two. You need to be figuring things out as you're doing it, and therefore you're talking all the time. So there's this myth that feedback is just a time sink in Agile. It's critical. Feedback is not just talk. It's the thing that allows us to prevent costly mistakes, to head down the wrong path. So it's a gateway to better action. And those the better actions can lead to reducing the amount of work, the time that we invest in doing something, or worse yet, the amount of time that we waste. We end up having to throw down the garbage because we ended up going down the wrong path. So we want for teams to revise their whatever it is that they're building based on early customer input, having that interaction with the customer, that feedback. Remember, Agile is very different. In waterfall perspective, you may not see the customer for a quarter or 6 months or a year. And by that point, all that you want to hear is everything's great, everything's fantastic, good job. That's the only thing you want to hear from the customer. That's not waterfall. That's not Agile. In Agile, because you don't know, you don't have a clarity on what it is that you need to build. You need to be constantly hearing from the customer, getting the feedback that is going to allow you to make fine-grained adjustments, or sometimes wholesale adjustments to what you're building to align with what they need. That customer input is critical. Their feedback is critical to make sure that we end up on the right path. So, building on that, I'm reminded of a situation that I ran into. With all the best intentions, we want to have this feedback culture, and this was years ago. I was deep enough into Agile that was part of my DNA, but I wasn't deep enough into it to understand the full dynamics and how people perceive this. And I found myself in a situation where there was an event that I was invited to. This was a really big deal and very high profile visibility. And the group that was organizing it was not Agile. So the event went great. Everybody had a fantastic time. It was the talk of the town, everybody very happy, all good. And then I was invited to a retrospective, at least what I thought was a retrospective. And I brought my Agile perspective. I didn't think about it. Again, this was years ago. I wasn't attuned to understanding it. And I was asked as part of that feedback if I had any feedback. And with the best of intentions. It wasn't anything negative. It was just something on the lines of, oh, it's like next time it would be really good if we had walkie-talkies to coordinate the front of the house to the back of the house. Something as innocuous as that. No, but other than that, it was all glowing. Everything was great, fantastic. I was trying to offer something that would be helpful for the next iteration, which is, from an Agile perspective, how we look at things. Oh boy. Yeah, that killed the mood. That room went silent, and I was so confused at the time. It's like, what did I do? I did what you asked me to do. When Waterfall asks for feedback, it doesn't really want to hear it. Because think about it from the perspective, as I said, Waterfall is executing. Do, do, do. We have all done it before. We've done it several times. We're familiar with this. We're demonstrating our expertise. If you're going to give me feedback, it's because something went terribly wrong. If you're going to interrupt the celebration, if you're going to interrupt the process, and I'm going to have to listen to it, it better be something valuable. So the perception, the emotional reaction to feedback is not positive at all. It's you're delivering bad news. And it doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth afterwards. You've already incurred that attack. That's how it's perceived. So here I come with my, oh, good idea to have walkie-talkies. It went over like a lead balloon. Agile views it completely differently. Because we are in these cycles of figuring things out, we don't know, we're going blind, we're trying to make sure that we make it through this maze that keeps the walls keep changing as we take steps. Anybody says anything, we go, oh, thank you for that perspective. It's like, I'll try that, I hope it works. Thank you for the feedback. Very honestly, Agile views feedback as a gift. It's, I was there, you were there, I didn't notice anything, you noticed something. Great, we can improve. Oh, that's not a big deal. Oh, we can get walkie-talkies next time. That's fantastic. That's easy. Everything else went great, and that's the only thing. Fantastic. Thank you, and we can make it better. It really feels like a gift. That's not how Waterfall perceives it. So be mindful of that. In engaging in this and going down this path, understand that, first of all, we always have to align the approach that we take to the type of work that we're doing. If you are in a simple and complicated, understand that feedback is viewed very differently. So be careful. And if you're in the agile space and you're dealing with highly complex, uncertain, ambiguous, changing, yes, we want the feedback. And we need to create the culture for that. So the role for feedback in agile practices very commonly include retrospectives, so that we're looking at things after things have happened, and then we get together and we talk about it and we share the perspectives. You want for those to be as soon after completing something, because that's when the memories are freshest. So we can offer the best quality feedback at that moment. Or during daily opportunities, there's daily check-ins. So on a daily basis, whatever we've noticed, it's fresh, it's immediate, and it's just simply, oh, I noticed this, and that's great feedback. And as we go about our day, we can incorporate that feedback in real time. So there are different ways that you can do it, but whichever way, you first have to build psychological safety for it. Again, don't assume that your company is ready and people are ready for feedback. Initially, they're probably going to freak out. They're probably going to go, why are you coming to me with all of this information? Things are not going that bad. And that's not the intent at all. It's a shift in culture. So we have to create the psychological safety for people to perceive it well. Now, that's a very common mistake that I see when people embrace this and say, okay, I hear you. Yeah, this is a good thing for us to do. Let's do it. What if I was so conditioned from that perspective of a feedback that it wants to make it digestible? And this is when we get to sandwich feedback. And sandwich feedback is a practice that even Waterfall, anybody in management understands at this point that sandwich feedback is a very negative way of delivering feedback. It People see through that. When you first say something really nice, sandwich in the bad news, and then finish with something nice, it just looks awful. It looks dishonest. It really brings into question your honesty as a human being in talking to others. And it feels manipulative. People feel manipulated. The positive stuff obviously has no positive effect. It just becomes disingenuous, and that doesn't leave people in a mood to listen to the feedback. So avoid that kind of approach. Instead, you want to create effective feedback mechanisms. You want them to be structured, for example, so there's a cadence. So people learn to expect that on a regular basis, there's going to be feedback. I mentioned two examples right now. There's many others. We can discuss those as we go along. But for example, the retrospectives at the end of finishing something, then you get together, you know that that's going to happen. So there's no anxiety, there's no buildup to it. It's just part of what you do, or on a daily basis as part of daily check-ins. The other one, which is the one that can be a little bit trickier, is real-time feedback. And that's really valuable, because if at any moment you notice something, the most valuable time to give that feedback is immediately after, or as close to immediately after it's happened. Human memories are very fragile. We forget the details very quickly. We may remember the generalities, but the details, they go away very quickly. So what you want to do is give that feedback as soon as possible after the event. because then you have greater chance of people remembering and people being able to contextualize the feedback that you're giving relative to good, accurate memories. So that kind of feedback, as I mentioned at the beginning, it could be written. It's okay if that's the only opportunity. That's okay. Make sure to leave the door open for clarification always. And if you have an opportunity to pick up the phone or get on a video call, even better. And then you can have the quick talk about it. Make it quick, not something heavy. This is not about heavy. Again, in waterfall, usually the feedback is something really negative. So it's a heavy event. And sometimes it takes time, or it's just the message is really heavy. This is not. You want to make it really light, really simple, and very as clear as possible, so that people get accustomed to it and it's just part of a normal way of doing business. The customer perspective and focus, that is so, so invaluable. It's looking from the customer, having the opportunity to see the work that you've done from the customer's perspective is so invaluable. In an agile space, remember, you're trying to navigate through this maze that keeps changing as you take every step. Having that feedback from the customer is so helpful to make sure that you stay on track to get through. And if you don't have that feedback, that's very disoriented, it's very dangerous. It increases the risk of ending up in the wrong place. So if you don't already have a mechanism to be in front of the customer and to listen to the customer directly from the customer, that's a priority. You want to establish that kind of relationship with your customer so that you have that guide to help you move through. What you want to avoid is ending up, and this again is natural, from coming from waterfall. Just as waterfall has all of its different stages, and work is, I mentioned in a video recently about silos and collaboration, throwing the work over the wall, putting it to the customer's lap is another wall. You're just throwing it over the wall, and that's up to them. And it's customary for that to happen maybe on a quarterly basis, every 6 months. We're not really engaged. We're not really looking for that customer feedback from that type of work. And again, I keep saying it over and over again. If what you're doing is simple and complicated, it aligns with that, well, there can be high expectation that you're just going to deliver it. So there's not as much need. Not in Agile. In the Agile type of work, because it's so unclear, there's so many variables, you want to have that constant feedback. So if you're going to work in an Agile, from an Agile perspective, you want to make sure that your customers understand that, and you want for them to be aware that you're looking for that continuous feedback from them. So there's an investment and effort from their side. There's a benefit. Like I said already, if we don't take action on their feedback, they're going to stop giving it because it is an investment. It's an effort. And if we're not going to do anything with it, they're going to stop doing it. And if they see that they give us feedback and the next time that we get together, we took action, they love it. They absolutely love that. They will really engage and start giving you more and more valuable feedback all the time. So continuous delivery cycles have embedded into them this feedback coming from the users and customers as an integral part of every iterative cycle. That's what we want to do. That's what we'll be getting to. And when we get the feedback, sometimes it puts us in odd situations because as we sit with our customers and we get the feedback directly from them, sometimes that creates conflict with our internal stakeholders. So we need to navigate through that. And as I mentioned before, in a customer-centric culture, we're going to be favoring the customer. So we need to have those difficult conversations with our stakeholders in providing to them insight into the feedback that we're getting, so that they understand why some of our prioritization has to change in order to align with the customer needs. So feedback carries some consequences that we have to manage through. As we look at implementing feedback and as part of our culture, we need to look at the human elements associated with it. I already mentioned mindfulness. Mindfulness is really important when both we're giving and receiving feedback. We want to deliver our message, as I said, in a succinct, useful way, and being caring about the person that we're giving the feedback to. And when we receive it, we want to be mindful of it. We want to consider it carefully. So our self-awareness really impacts the feedback quality. If we're just going to make it a transactional exchange of information, probably not going to be very valuable for either party. But if we're going to engage in it and really make it a meaningful exchange, then we can benefit from the full value of the feedback being given. So we have a strength of inclusivity in team feedback. And when we have teams coming together, the amazing thing is that we have different perspectives. That's really valuable. I mentioned before, from an AI perspective, AI implementations, just the fact that we're working with teams, we're including teams, the teams are all actively engaged with the AI development and the AI interactions. We're bringing in multiple perspectives. So that plurality is going to have real value. It's going to prevent going down a bad path. It's going to prevent biases. It's going to prevent myopic implementations. It's going to prevent a lot of problems. So just as we give feedback to each other as humans, providing that pluralistic feedback perspective to AI systems is going to help make sure that we come up with the best solutions possible. So teams coming together, providing feedback, are another really valuable aspect of having this mechanism, a communication mechanism embedded into our culture. There will be resistance. There are, as I mentioned, there's this perception of judgment from coming from the waterfall perspective. Again, if you're going to interrupt me to tell me something, it's probably something really bad. So when we're coming to people, people are conditioned to feel that there's judgment being communicated. This is confrontational. We have to work through that. So we have to make it psychologically safe for people to express feedback and to receive feedback. So we have to create a culture where feedback is normalized. This is part of what we do. People come to expect it. Again, if it's on a cadence, people know that it's coming. It's not a big deal. It's the spontaneous feedback. That's the one that you need to be more careful with, more sensitive with. So when it comes to AI, AIs are built on systems that incorporate feedback. The very nature of AI, the training, I've mentioned epochs before, they have an incremental approach to improving their data, which comes from feedback. There are many examples of this. For example, there's this concept of labeled data. Labeled data is foundational. This is where AI systems learn through data that's provided by humans, often in the form of labeled data sets. So what does that mean? Image recognition. We're all familiar with that. We've all gone through the captchas that are asking us if this is a dog, is a cat, whatever. This is constant feedback. And this constant feedback, large volumes of it, are giving the AIs the perspective that allows it to learn. Positive feedback reinforces, negative feedback corrects, adjusts, so that they can improve their accuracy. Okay. There's when we're building large language models, there's iterative learning through epochs. Its AI models improve accuracy over time by multiple cycles of training the language models. Each epoch refines the model by reducing errors based on feedback from previous iterations. So there's loss functions, getting technical terms, but there's approaches that the process of creating the large language model uses to correct errors and refine it so that every iteration of creating the large language model is better and better and better. So an example, for example, would be speech recognition. Speech recognition systems improve the transcription accuracy after analyzing repeated corrections by users. So this is where the user feedback is so important to help fine-tune the quality of the translation. There's also dynamic feedback loops. For example, as we interact with with AI systems. So it's not just when we build them, but when we interact with them. Human feedback refines AI performance in real time, adapting to new patterns or expected user behavior. When we're in conversational AIs, for example, the conversational AI learns more how to build effective responses when we flag that this is correct or incorrect. So it's using our feedback to fine tune its responses. Another example is recommender systems. These are the ones that are going to guide us to look at certain types of information, leading to clicks, purchases, ratings, whatever. This balances immediate feedback with long-term user satisfaction because it's using that information that we're giving it, that confirmation that we're giving it right now, to shape its long-term behavior. Now, if we don't provide it, it could end up always giving us the same information that we don't want. Or if it doesn't use it, if it misuse it, then we could start losing trust in it because it's not giving us information that's relevant from our perspective. Conversational AIs, chatbots, and virtual assistants improve with continuous user interaction and corrections. As we engage with the AI, giving it feedback and saying, no, that's not what I meant this, it helps it fine tune its interpretation and the way that it expresses this information to us. So whenever you have the opportunity, always give that feedback because that will help fine tune, that will help improve the AI and its way of interacting with us. What I want to avoid is creating echo chambers. The challenges, the bias, the consequences of having echo chambers are really something that we need to be very careful about. The AI system can become biased if feedback loops are consistently reinforcing errors or incorrect preferences. This is how we can end up in trouble. When we say, for example, news feeds, okay, news feeds are very prone to being very biased. We always reinforcing the I want this type of news because this is the one that I like. When we do that, we're reinforcing one aspect. We're going to end up with more and more and more of that. This has a cascading effect. This has a cumulative building effect. And eventually we end up with news that has very little to do with reality. No, we want to avoid that. We want to provide feedback that is more balanced, that is balancing the AI systems. And the AI systems can also help or hurt the process. So this is a situation where we want for humans and AI systems to be working, collaborating hand in hand to make sure that we avoid the extremes of bias. Having that diversified feedback, diversified data sets and perspectives helps reduce the bias. So regularly testing algorithms against edge cases, making sure that we haven't excluded something from the data set from the delivery is really important to make sure that we remain inclusive, we remain balanced, we avoid over weighing one aspect and ignoring others. So there are ethical considerations to consider as well when we're looking at the feedback that we provide to AI systems, and also the how the AI systems need to deal with ethical considerations. So feedback loops should reflect diverse user experiences to prevent systemic biases. And what's really important when we do this is that there needs to be a mechanism to provide feedback when the AI system is responding to something that we said, something that we did, that it finds problematic with its programming. There may be some ethical aspect that's been programmed into it. And the danger in here is that if the AI system doesn't have a feedback system, it could end up enforcing and implementing punitive actions that leave the user completely without any recourse. And that's something that really concerns me. I've encountered situations like that where the AI system has misinterpreted my action and I have no recourse. There's nobody to go to. There's no way to provide feedback. And that ends up hurting us Building systems that aren't transparent in the way that they make decisions, and then systems that make decisions without allowing for feedback, that's a very dangerous implementation. I've observed this happening recently, and it concerns me. Without going into singling out any particular model, you may have seen this as well. In rolling out models, there was one particular one that I really appreciated, that it disclosed as it was going through its processing the steps that it was going through. So you could see behind the wall what was going on, the steps that it was going through. And that was incredibly valuable because that allowed me to see the thinking process, the steps taken. And when I disagreed, I was able to go back and take a look and go, oh, it's because it took this path. That makes sense. That transparency really increased my confidence in the model. It gave me a good perspective and a good understanding of why I was behaving and acting in a particular way. That's been taken away, and now it's a black box. And black boxes with AI, not a good combination. That's going to erode trust and confidence in the AI models. So as we build these systems, having the opportunity for humans to provide feedback and having the AI systems be transparent and showing us what they're doing will only increase people's comfort in using the technologies effectively and trusting what the technologies are creating. So this is something for, if you're involved in creating AI systems, keep that in mind. That's a very, very powerful form of feedback that works both ways. If we ignore the feedback, if we just don't do anything with it, well, then AI systems will fail to meet user needs or even harm users. Think of a health diagnostic system that doesn't account for feedback and it continues me diagnosing. Um, Obviously, we want to avoid that. So in building systems, we want, it's not just for humans that we want for the feedback to be there. We want for AI systems to have feedback mechanisms so that we can fine tune them and they can better serve the needs of the users. So if you want to implement this, how do you go about it? As I mentioned, be careful. Start small. I always say start small, and it's the approach you want to go. You want to go small. You want to take easy steps, pilot things, and educate people. I made a video about ADCAR where we want to build awareness of what it is that we're doing, the reasons for it. You want to do that. Remember what I shared about waterfall. If your environment is waterfall, it has an expectation of what feedback means and why it's happening. So you want to educate everybody that this is different. Take the time, educate, start small, little by little progress, get to the point where people just learn to expect that there's going to be this feedback. If you have consistency, if you set it on a cadence, that's really helpful because then people just simply adapt to it and go, oh, yeah, it's the feedback time. Okay, got it. We're going to do that. And that reduces a lot of the anxiety around providing and receiving feedback. If you do it regularly, that reinforces the message and the usefulness and the value. Take action and measure the effectiveness of the feedback. Share with others. When feedback has led to positive results, share that with everybody. Say, because we heard from the customer that this was happening, we were able to avoid a critical situation. Because you gave me this feedback, I was able to then take this action, which the customer ended up really liking. Highlight the successes of whenever we share feedback. So feedback loops are more than just a communications mechanism. They're the engine of growth for both agile teams and AI systems. By mastering them, we can create workplaces that thrive on learning, collaboration, innovation. So, if you like this, share your thoughts in the chat and comments. And if you found this helpful, stay tuned for more insights on building adaptive, resilient organizations in the era of AI. Thanks for watching.